Welcome back. Today we've been talking about the moral aspects of society in general, and in this part of the program we're going to be looking specifically at Islamophobia and how Islam is actually represented within the media. Jahangir Sahab, I'd like to turn to you first. Could you actually explain to us what the term Islamophobia really means?
Well, it's the fear of Islam. Anything that seems these days even remotely Islamic is fearsome. And the reason is because of the activities of certain Muslims, first of all, who are giving Islam a very bad name. They do certain things. For example, the first thing which jumps into your mind is terrorism, suicide bombing and all that.
Yeah, these are all the sort of words that are associated with it
exactly.
in the media at the moment.
So that's because of the Muslims themselves, unfortunately. But the media has also been highlighting certain things, rightly or wrongly, and has been portraying certain things absolutely wrongly on Islam, with the result that Islam is now perceived as something very negative and very fearsome.
Right. Okay. As a new sub, this term wasn't around, say, 15, 20 years ago, so why has it come about right now?
Well, as Jahangir Khan Sahib has said, look, we have to face the reality. We have given them the fuel for the fire. You know, the few madmen in the cell here has caused the whole prison to go on lockdown. And unfortunately, we are the ones who are suffering for it, who are trying our best now to get into the media, as you're doing here, and portray the positive image of Islam, but it doesn't sell. You know, this is the reality. The media wants to sell their magazine, their movies or whatever, and this is such an emotional issue for the non-Muslim that they figure this is the best way to have the next villain be some terrorist-looking person or Arab-looking person, and that will sell. I'll get my millions on this. But if you say it's a peaceful-looking, loving, you know, English face who looks like us, who acts like us, that's boring. You know, how can I gain advantage from this? So this is part of the problem.
Okay. So Dr. Saab, leaving on from that, don't you think it's unfair then that a small minority are being used to represent the whole Islamic world?
It is unfair, but you have to be practical. The people that blow up these buildings are not blonde-haired, blue-eyed women. They are terrorists who claim that they are Muslim. So when Muslims turn around and say it's unfair why we are being picked out, okay, it's unfair. We're all God-fearing, law-abiding Muslims, and it is unfair. Life has become difficult. But unfortunately, it's the price that we are going to have to pay to maintain the security of the countries and the lands that we live in.
So you're talking in terms of like security checks and that sort of discrimination as well. So how can we go about dealing with that? If there are people who are continuously checked for security just because they have a beard or they look a certain way, how do you as a person deal with that?
There is very little there's very little other way how you can deal with it. Unfortunately, as we've said, as a member of the security forces, as a police officer, you have a gut instinct about certain things. Okay, you cannot label everybody with the same, paint everybody with the same brush, but you've got to home down as to where your likeliest risk is going to be. And although I don't like to admit it, it's not nice, but your average Muslim is going to get picked upon.
Okay, all right, let's move
it's
to the
not
audience.
nice, but it's the fact of the
realities
matter.
of the day. Okay, so from the audience, do you think people are actually being discriminated on because they're Muslims at the moment? Rashid, have you got a point you'd like to raise?
I do think that in the media they are trying to portray us in a negative manner, but I think at the start of this whole terrorist image that was given to us, it was a lot worse generally in society, but I think now a lot of people have wised up from what I can see personally. I mean, you still do get with security and with police and stuff, there is always that discrimination there, which I feel. But I think with everyday people that I seem to interact with, I know that they've said to me themselves that, you know, what they see and hear in the media, they know that they are from a certain extreme type of group. Okay. And so I think people are a lot wiser now about what they hear from the media.
You touched upon there is discrimination in there. You can't.
But I don't think. Yeah, but I don't think that people in general have that view anymore. Okay. As such.
Let's get another view. All right. Thanks for that. Yeah, Sophie, would you like to add?
Just touching upon moral decline as well, what we talked earlier. I actually had a friend who saw me as a religious Muslim, but also had a Muslim as well, another Muslim friend. But because he wasn't religious and because he wasn't doing his 5-day prayers. He wasn't a practicing Muslim. They turned around and said to me, oh, normally your type of Muslims, they label me as your type of Muslims, are quite violent in terms of they took culture in account and, you know, practicing Muslims and nowadays, obviously looking at the media, that's what they labeled me as. So I was quite offended. I was like, I returned a comment and said, you should be looking at the other person who's not actually a practicing Muslim in the sense, and, you know, ask them that question. So why are you not?
So basically, it's easy to judge others, but sometimes you have to actually look at yourself sometimes.
So yeah, it's again, it's media related.
Okay,
so.
let's get one other view as well. I mean, living in the West, is it difficult as a Muslim to live in the West, as a Muslim, to actually portray yourself as a Muslim? We've got a point here at the front.
It depends actually on the area where you live at. I mean, as I think everyone knows, about 4 or 5 years ago, the local area, Morden, it used to be really difficult for Muslims to live here, and especially Asians. And now the time has changed, and people got used to the Asian race. And I mean, now it's not that worse as it used to be, even though it is still worse. But
and they got used to Muslims,
in
they've understood
particular,
Islamic culture.
and they have seen that this mosque, the community of the people which come to this mosque are not as bad as we know from the media, and they have experienced us, the Ahmadiyya Jamaat, and they have seen that they are not bad as we see in the media.
Okay. So you're saying actually it's our personal duties to counteract that, show people that, you know, have a look at us and we're not all like that. We shouldn't.
A good experience for them.
Yeah, we should set the right example.
We should give them a good presentation of ourselves and the community.
Definitely. As a new sub, turning to you, I just want to move on slightly. Within Islamophobia, I mean, we talk about terrorism and everything, but currently at the moment there's a whole sort of press phenomena going around the hijab and head coverings and the veil. And what's your views on that? How can we sort of protect the sanctity of the hijab when it's being attacked?
What is really striking is the fact that this is happening in the Western world, who champion human rights and civil rights and religious liberties. I mean, the first missionary who came to the United States, he was barred from entering the country because they felt this man is going to spread the philosophy of polygamy. And he said, you know, this is a concession that's given in the Quran. It's not a compulsion. It doesn't define me as a Muslim. And how hypocritical of you as a nation that goes around talking about equality and rights and liberty and justice. And I want to come into your nation as a Muslim missionary and to preach my religion, but you're barring me for this issue. Whereas your preachers go all over the world and no one is supposed to stop them from entering without you raising a hue and a cry and perhaps bringing the army behind them to demand your rights. So this is what I find most shocking here in the West. I mean, I can't believe that even now in the United Kingdom, they're talking about banning women from putting a scarf on. At the same time, if a woman walks down the street without any clothes on, this is okay. This is liberty, this is freedom. She should have her right to express herself that way. But to cover her head, somehow it's offending me. How is it offending me? This is what they have to answer if they're talking about freedom and equality in the West.
Jongis, I want to turn to you and get your views on this as well. Do you think this is actually a blatant attack on Islam, or is it because of the Islamophobia?
Well, it's very complex. The whole issue is more complex than you might think. You see, there are also the media cartels out there who want to capitalize on a certain image, on a certain lifestyle. That's where they make their money. Right. So obviously people who do not want to conform to that lifestyle, and not only that, are preaching their lifestyle to others, are a threat. So they need to remove that threat somehow. They have to portray them as the devil. They're the bad guys. Don't live like them. And so
they mean in terms of people who they're being told to portray their beauty, to wear fashionable clothes? Yes, people are of course being encouraged to expose their beauty and to embellish themselves as much as possible, to the extent of actually changing their bodies to do so. So anything which is countering that is the enemy. And so we can understand it from that viewpoint, of course. But again, we have the other viewpoint, which is the social one. And it's very complex. There are different elements at play here.
There is also the religious element which can't be overlooked. Although it might not seem so, but religions are always in competition with each other. And the West is the land of Christianity, primarily. So Islam is also an evangelical religion.
Right.
So we do go out and we do preach our lifestyle, so it's a competing message. So one wonders whether there aren't any elements in the Christian establishment as well, who would like to go along with that fact that we should show that the Islamic veil, etc., segregation is a bad thing, because that would perhaps help them to get their message across even with more strength, you see.
Okay.
So it's quite complex.
Okay, Dr. Saab, what's your opinions on because there's so much being said about the hijab in the news and stuff at the moment.
Just to actually add to what Jahangir Saab mentioned, he mentioned that it was a very complex issue. And he mentioned that there's an issue of vested interests of society and societal norms and fashion trends and things like that. And I would just want to link it back to the whole issue of moral decline. It's not just Islam and Muslims that talk about issues like this. Prominent people in society, the intelligentsia of society, are actually aware of these risks that society is at. Even the leader of the opposition, David Cameron, recently, only a few weeks ago, spoke at great length as what he called sort of premature sexualization of our children in the way they dress, in the way they are portrayed to dress by sort of large fashion magnates, etc. And it becomes a norm, and you have to fit into that norm. And those that don't fit into that norm,
growing up faster and faster and younger, isn't it?
And again, the media, unfortunately, plays a part in taking them along that journey. And those that oppose that or feel they want to lead a different way are some way seen as abnormal.
Okay. While we're on the topic of the hijab as well, let me just get some points of view from the audience here. Rahman, if you'd like to add something onto that?
Well, we've heard a lot from the panel saying that, we're not sure. It's a very complex issue, that's true. But I have read in the newspapers many times some women who are very much discriminated because they wear hijab, but then they try and go against the state and they try and sue certain people. But what we have to remember is that even it says in the Quran that if the state will change its laws, that you have to abide by the laws that are in that state. So as Muslims, we have to do our best to take whatever people throw at us, but take it in the best way, and not, like there are some demonstrations by some Muslims outside houses of parliaments claiming we want Sharia law. I mean, that's not fair. That's not in the Quran. That's completely anti-Quranic. So you have to do the best as a Muslim.
Make sure your efforts aren't sort of counterproductive.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, all right, thanks. Let's get some more points.